Before I delve into each of our speakers and they will make a little presentation of their works, I would urge you to see their works if you haven't already at the fair, and each of them will speak about it. The purpose of this conversation will be twofold. One is to, of course, position or contextualize their work, each of their work in different situations and where they will come from and what kind of practices they have. And the second would also be to question the questioning of disruption, at the same time categories that we put artists under. Without further ado, I would invite Lakshmi to speak a little bit about her work, and maybe there's a video. You take first.
My journey towards Kasava was a way for me to pay tribute to my aunt. She was always dressed in pristine versions of the Kasava motivation, which is a traditional attire of Kerala worn by both men and women. And in a way, it was not even by choice. She was widowed very early, and this was sort of this garment that was enforced on her. So for me, this textile sort of became this marker of the body that it was worn on. Hi, I'm Lakshmi Madhavan, a visual artist living and working out of Mumbai. This material has been a marker of gender, caste, community in many ways. So if you see the first work that I did, I've used the essence of language to indicate sort of the politics of exclusion. And I'm collaborating with the weavers of Balrampuram to create a lot of that work. What I'm sort of trying to also bring forth is that there is this interaction between the body of the loom, the body of the weavers, the sort of body of the textile and how it marks bodies. The attempt is to deconstruct these binaries of caste, community, gender, and think about whether I can sort of weave a cloth of universality. Because I'm juggling so many roles, being a woman, being an artist, being a mother, I felt like there was a huge responsibility on me to sort of pass on some of the stories of my origins to my child. And for me, the Kasava became an umbilical cord, that helped me trek back home. Firstly, thank you to all of you for being here on this heavily early Sunday morning. It's been a wonderful opportunity to be the artist in residence this year at the fair, and I think it's a sort of nice inclusive event with all of the other artists in residence, Debashish, the Vayeda Brothers, all of us to be here together and talk about our own practices, some of our challenges, what we sort of envision for the future of our practice. So, I'm going to start because I think we're a little strict on time. So I'm going to give you a short overview of my practice. You already saw a snippet of my video, which sort of contextualizes who I am as an artist, as a mother, as a woman. And I think there's a lot of intersectionality of a lot of those roles come into being in my expression of my artistic concern. So, for me, as you saw in the video and I was explaining that I've had a very nomadic background, and maybe that's why a consistent sort of inquiry in my work has been around the ideas of identity, belonging. How does a body acquire sort of these layers of who they are, where do they belong, how do they situate themselves? So I think for me, Kasava sort of became this natural material to explore some of these consistent inquiries in my work. And in a way, the relationship with Kasava started from a very intimate place. You again saw in the video that my amma, that references my grandmother in Malayalam. She was a lady who I was incredibly close to. Can we just change the slide? And she in a way shaped me into who I am today in so many ways. She was this really feisty person, way ahead of her times in a million ways. And even today, I think for me what she represents is this sense of home, this nostalgia of this person who accepted me for who I am, this person who allowed me the sort of freedom to explore, to understand myself better. And even today, if I close my eyes, my grandmother for me is this vision in white and gold. Because she wore the Kasva Mundu Veshti throughout her life. And the other strongest sort of sensorial tactile memory is the smell or this whiff of her Veshti. There was a particular way that she would start her, Veshti. And as kids in summer holidays, she would involve us in the process. We'd put it into rice water, or the kids would fight about who'd want to stretch it. So, there's this distinct smell stuck in my head, this smell of her sweat mixed with the smell of rice water. And even today, if I think about her, she's like this sort of appearance in white and gold, and then there's that smell. And I lost her 2 years back, sometime in the process of starting the works with the Kasva. But for me, my Amma was really like my deepest sort of connection to my birthland, my soil, my culture, my people, my roots, my language. And Kasva, in a way, started from that place, of exploring some of these layered narratives. Can we go to the next slide? And so for my grandmother, like I was mentioning, she wore the Kasva Mundu Veshti throughout her life, every single day. And this was in a way not by choice. She was widowed very early and belonging to the Nair community, which is one of the few matrilineal communities in India. This was a garment that was enforced on her. And this garment came with a lot of rules. The border of the kasva that she wore, which we call kara in Malayalam, could not be beyond a certain width. There could be no color, design or motif on her kasva mundaveshti. The kasva threads that are used to weave the mundaveshti for the widows used a kasva thread that was a lot more muted. So very early on, I think as a girl growing up around her, I sort of ingested the fact that there was this really complex connection between body and cloth. There was a lot of rules that clothing or attire came with. And I think I carried some of that subconsciously into a lot of my inquiries. Next slide. So, when I arrived at even Kasaba, the starting point for me, while it was this sort of personal, intimate place, it then went on to have a larger sort of stance on the socio-politics of the material, the sort of history of the material in the sense that this material is known for being non-inclusive. It marks bodies that wear it in terms of caste, community, gender. Next slide. No, I'm not done. Sorry about that. I could continue speaking a little more. Here is actually a shot from one of the weavers at Vayeda Brothers working on the works, and this is actually one of the works that's showing here at the fair at the Devi Art Foundation booth. And my journey with Kasaba is also incomplete if I don't sort of acknowledge the weavers from the weaving community in Balrampura who I've been engaging with, collaborating with for the last 4 years. Balrampura is one of the oldest and original centers for Kasaba weaving, and even Balrampura has a really interesting history. It gets its name from King Balrama Varman, who was the erstwhile king of Travancore, who sought the most sort of skilled weavers back then in the southern kingdom. And they belong to the Shalyar community that today sort of stand in Tirunelveli in Tamil Nadu. So back then, of course, our geographies, borders and outlines are not the way we know them today. So it is believed that these 8 weavers were brought closer to the Travancore palace. They were given a piece of land, and in a lot of ways that little village stands in the same way as back then. So it's this long strip of street. On one side is the houses. Most of the weavers weave out of their houses. On the other side is where the shops are. So the weavers were meant to weave cloth for the royal family, and whatever excess cloth was left, they were allowed to sell at the shops across. So it's believed that even today, all the weavers in this particular weaving community in Balrampura are all descendants of that 8 members of the Shaleen community that relocated here. And I think that's also an interesting sort of narrative in this textile. When you think about who does this craft belong to? Who is allowed to, GI tag this? Especially when you work with handloom craft, you have to think about this GI tagging that happens. So when you speak to the last mile weaver, they speak Malayalam in a very different way. They have a lot of referencing of Tamil in their language, in their customs, in their attire. If you speak to them, they sometimes don't even acknowledge that they're on this side of the border. So it's an interesting way to read the textile too. Have we fixed the slide, Shaleen? Sorry. Sorry about that.
I mean, I think something happened to the order of the slides. But I'm sure we can circle back to it
Sure.
at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want me to? Sorry, there's some slides that we can show. So sure. So, I think for me, the weavers are a huge part of my journey. Without their help, and that's a still of my master weaver, Jaya. I think the first time when I landed up in Balarapuram 4 years ago, it was a huge challenge to, even get a single weaver to work with me, to think about how do I bring some of my sort of artistic visions to life. But without these two men, that's Jayan and his son, and they also sort of represent the intergenerationality of the craft, none of what I do could have been possible. They worked with me on making every crazy idea of mine sort of come to life. Because if you think about it, for the last 50 years or more, in any sort of craft tradition, if you see across India, and even with the custom tradition, there were only 3 products that they were doing. The custom mundu veshti, the 2-part sari, there's a single sari, or there's a torth. Torth is the specific particular kind of dal that you get from Kerala. It's made out of cotton. So when I came in there and I said I want to condense the cloth to 3 by 2, make it go smaller 1 by 1, or make it larger, go 20 feet, it was a lot of technical challenges. And of course, I don't weave, I don't understand weaving. I don't think in this lifetime of mine I will be able to. But it's only because of the support of my weavers that I've been able to, sort of manage so much of the technicalities of it, and then work with, how do we sort of reimagine some of the aesthetics, some of the design. Can we go to the next slide? So this is the first work that I did, which is called Hanging by a Thread, and this is the series that sort of continued all the way to the 3rd iteration, and the 3rd iteration is what I show here. And this first work that I did was a synthesis of, decade-long conversations had between my grandmother and me. We were very close, like I mentioned, and we spoke about, in a way, everything under the sun. She could have, I think she was sort of my first feminist role model in many ways. And if you see, the languages used here are English and Malayalam, in a way connoting to the colonial native divide. And how, when you define the fibers of identity and belonging, the linguistic complexities is one of the important tenets of reading that. Next slide. This is a view of the installation. This work was shown at Lokame Karwad in Alapi, that was curated by Bose Krishnamachari. And the work sort of got its title from the central installation that you see. It's sort of this 8-foot installation with cassava threads that suspends an actual veshti of my grandmother that was handed down to me as heirloom. And I kind of had held on to it for a very long time, but it had got to a point where it was tethering, it was capturing, and I used it in this particular work. And what happened was, in the 5 months of this installation being there, the threads, as you see, in a way on their own, frayed, broke. Can we go to the next slide? There was a lot of damage that happened to this particular veshti in itself. And what I was sort of metaphorically alluding to was what time was doing to my connection with my own birthland, with my own grandmother, my roots. And all of it was causing a lot of anxiety because when I made this work, I just become a mother. And I had this sense of urgency to sort of think about how do I explain to my son his sense of place in the world. I had really, lived across the world in many ways, never staying at a place for more than 6 months. But when I had a child and I had to think about how do I sort of bridge the connection from the past to the future, there were a lot of concerns within me, a lot of anxieties. So this work, I think, carried forth a lot of that. And while there was at one end a personal narrative, the other end was also talking about the craft. The customer craft was also in a way at a precarious situation. If something was not done to think about intervention, to think about how do you save the craft, it was going to, fade away sooner than we knew. No. So when I started work in Balrampur about 4.5 years back, my master weaver giant had about 150 weavers. Today as we speak, we have 75 to 60 weavers. So the rate of acceleration at which we are losing the craft is quite a serious situation. Next slide please. So while the first work was addressing a lot of sort of layered personal narratives, the second work that I showed last year at Art District 13 in Delhi sort of extended the politics of the material. Like I mentioned, this material that's kasava is a potent marker of the body. How people wear the kasava sort of defines your place in society. Today, only the upper caste men are allowed to wear the kasava all the way till their ankle. Lower caste can only wear it till their knees. Or the fact that how earlier women were not allowed to cover their torso. There was a breast tax attached to it. So the words that are also sort of woven on this text, you can read them as anybody, everybody, somebody, nobody. I know the last one's a little hazy. Next slide. You could also read them as anybody, everybody, somebody, nobody, and sort of the contextual meaning entirely changes. And what I'm referencing is the fact that this body becomes sort of this powerful symbolic surface which hierarchies are demarcated, metaphysical commitments to culture are inscribed. Next slide. And this is the work showing here, and I hope all of you all go to see it. And I think the larger question I'm trying to ask is that can Kasava sort of break itself from the shackles of oppression, non-inclusion, and can it offer a site for redemption, transformation? Can I as an artist think about weaving a cloth of universality? So I'm going to end there with just talking about some of the larger concerns with this particular series.
Thank you so much, Lakshmi. It's wonderful to know the way the work is progressing. We move on to the Vayeda Brothers, also working in a field which is rooted in tradition and ritual. Over to you guys.
Thanks so much. It was really interesting to hear a story about communities. And as a new generation Warli tribe, we are inspired by the life that we have lived with the community, by the people, and the stories that we have heard from them, the environment that we have experienced, touched, feel, and lived. And when it comes to render all these stories and experiences on the canvas, we always return to the basic grammar of our inherited style of painting.
Hello, I am Vayeda and I am Vayeda, and we are Vayeda Brothers. Our journey of life began in Warli tribe. We born and grew up in nature-loving Warli community. Our process of making masterpiece start with the research and study of Warli stories. The traditional way of Warli painting is very minimal. We use cotton or red soil as a base material and poster or acrylic white color to draw final story.
We are archiving all the stories and the drawing through our experience of practicing Warli art with the hope to help these thousands of years of tribal art form keep alive in the right direction. As a growing young artist from tribal community, we are setting new milestones for upcoming generations. We have been pushing our boundaries to encourage other tribal artists to stand for their traditional art forms, because what the world needs most is more people to come alive.
introduction about me and Tushar, but thank you so much for here. And we are Vayeda Brothers, and I am Mayur, and he's Tushar. So it's been roller coaster ride from last 14 years. When we started selling greeting cards on the stalls, and now face of the India Art Fair facade. So yeah, we started just like other private artists or other Warli artists, and with the hope and a vision to find the right platform for the century-old private art form in India. And there are a lot of art forms still underrated. From late 70s to 80s, the private art forms in India got really commercialized, and in today's digital world, we can see everywhere. And we really want to reintroduce what is Warli art about. So Warli art is not just the decorative art, or it's not just the art. It's us, it's people. And Warli art is a part of the Warli community. We have our own culture, our beliefs, our stories, myths. We worship nature, and all this worship you can see through our practice. So when we see all these paintings and art forms on the walls, anywhere, on the bed sheets, on the clothes, on the cottons, where people are using traditional motifs, gods and goddesses, the elements that we believe and we worship in a negative way. So we really try to provide the right information of all these forms and figures that we are practicing from thousands of years. So from the canvas to finding different materials, it was a long journey for me and Tushar to understand about the traditional materials that we are using from a very long time. And like when we started to we started our journey as a painters, it was really difficult for us to create something different, to create something new, because this is one of the very ancient tribal art form, and people in the Warli community, there are hundreds of people who are painting Warli with the same material, same techniques, same folk stories, and from outside, like not from the community, like outside people, there are thousands of people who are painting Warli. Whenever we travel in Mumbai, Delhi, and all major cities in India, we always find tribal artists. So there are a lot of people who think we should stop this, but we are not really against stop if people are using Warli art form as their language. But we really want people to understand the real meaning of all these motifs, so they can take it in the right direction. So from the canvas to finding different materials, so we are very much into different public art projects and trying to be the part of projects where we can provide the right information to the young people, schools, colleges, institutions. So this is one of the projects we did in Ladakh called Matho Village School. So that was another project where we were exploring a lot of stories while we were traveling in Ladakh and understanding about their native culture and trying to tell people that why we need these stories, why we need this information. Because in Warli, we speak Warli language, but we don't have a script. And Warli, for a Warli painting, we have seen Warli as an alphabet, as a language. So we don't call it painting, we call it writing. We write our own stories and experience and what is happening around the change and all stuff through our paintings. And we always try to encourage young people who are living with the community to understand their culture, because it's not written anywhere. It's the knowledge that we have about the painting, about the medicines, about the environment, and we all nowadays we are all speaking about sustainable life, organic lifestyle, but it's been there and it was around us. So we just need to figure out how to find these different ways and connections where we can connect with the tribal culture and the modern lifestyle. So we started our career as a painter, but now it's becoming a responsibility that how we are building a bridge between the community and the world, where we can find a suitable place for the tribal art form as well. At the same time, we can share the knowledge from different places. Thank you.
Thank you. That was fascinating. The work is, I mean, if you have seen it in person, you'll see how wonderful it is. We will move on to Debashish, who will say a little bit about his work, and then we have a quick discussion.
Hi. My body is the core around which I weave alternate visions of the self unbound by center or identity. Hi, I am Debashish Paul. I am an artist working across mediums including sculptural dresses, performance, video, photography and drawings that explores the landscape of my queer body. Recently I am working in Banaras. Its ghats, rivers, streets, markets, sounds and smells of everyday life flow through me. This city acts as a doorway to an ancient past and a speculative future. It inspires me to search for deeper ways of connecting the self. The pain of my own identity or lack thereof is a constant motivation. My process of sculpting a new identity involves collecting, pasting, cutting, weaving, stitching, drawing and performing. These figures are in always in flux, undergoing emotional transformation within a given time and space. I hope the performative nature of my artistic practice acts as an entry point for the viewers into my life and its narrative, and that in some way a tapestry of empathy is created.
मेरा हिंदी इंग्लिश दोनों खराब है, तो मैं कोशिश करूँगा और इस पार्टिकुलर वर्क से मैं पूरा मेरा प्रैक्टिस को मैं समझाने की कोशिश करूँगा। मेरा अभी कुछ भी नाले का दिस वर्क का काम है, तो मैं कैसे सोचता हूँ, कैसे मेरा बॉडी को एक्सप्लोर करता हूँ, तो इस पार्टिकुलर वर्क से मैं समझाने की कोशिश करूँगा। तो मेरा जो काम है, इस काम से मैं मेरा जो इंटरनल बॉडी है उसको मैं एक्सप्लोर करता हूँ। तो इस काम का नाम है रिवर मीट्स द सी। सो sometimes I feel the body has no limitation. So बॉडी कुछ भी बन सकता है, तो कभी रिवर भी बन सकता है, समुद्र भी बन सकता है, कभी कुछ एनिमल भी बन सकता है। फिजिकल बॉडी फिक्स्ड है, पर इंटरनल बॉडी बहुत फ्लूइड है। और नेचर के साथ कैसे बॉडी का जो रिलेशन है वो भी एक मैटर है। तो रिवर मीट्स द सी, जो रिवर गंगा के साथ मेरे कनेक्शन बहुत बचपन से है। मेरे गांव से गंगा बहती है और मैं अभी बनास में रहता हूँ, तो घाट मेरा रूम के थोड़ा दूर में घाट बहुत बचपन से गंगा के साथ मेरा बहुत कनेक्शन। मैं फील करता हूँ कि गंगा भी मेरा एक पार्ट ऑफ माय बॉडी। तो जब मैं कोची गया, तो मैं पहली बार कोची गया तो समुद्र देखा। समुद्र देखने के बाद जब मैं मिक्स किया सी के साथ, तो हमको लगा कि जो रिवर से गंगा समुद्र के साथ मिक्स कर रहे हैं। और एक ट्रेडिशनली जो हिंदू ट्रेडिशनली भी बहुत हमको बार बार इन्फ्लुएंस करता है। जैसे जब डेथ होता है, उसको अस्थि भी उसका गंगा में देता है और वो अस्थि बह के जो समुद्र में जाता है। तो एक जो रिचुअल कल्चर नेचर जो बॉडी का रिलेशनशिप है वो मैं बहुत अच्छे से उसको समझना चाहता हूँ। और मेरा जो मैं कौन हूँ अंदर, तो उसको भी मैं बार बार ढूंढता हुआ थ्रू एंशिएंट टू फ्यूचर में। इंटरनली मैं क्या हूँ, कौन सा आइडेंटिटी है मेरा, तो उसको मैं बार बार ढूंढने की कोशिश करता हूँ। और ये जो कॉस्ट्यूम है, ये कोई पर्टिकुलर जेंडर को रिप्रेजेंट नहीं करता है और कुछ भी हो सकता है। आगे बात करते थे।
Thank you, Debashish. It's beautiful. All of you have such unique practices which are rooted in certain, I mean, we spoke about already, I think in the conversations we all spoke about, each of you spoke about the different challenges that you already have overcome. Lakshmi, trying to change the centuries old, even structure of how you weave something. but also to question hierarchies, castes, ideas of the body. And the Vayeda Brothers, you come from a community that has been traditionally doing this work for so many years. You're incorporating the now in your work, but also keeping in mind the traditional practices. So you're straddling both generations in a way. And Debashish here is actually trying to question these identities that have already been established. So you guys are all challenging existing situations. So I want to start with you, Lakshmi, and in thinking of your work here, and the reason I want to talk about the work here because you can actually see the work and then recontextualize it to, and it's physically here. The repetition of the word body, the repetition of like any body, no body, some body, by even breaking the word up in two different words, you're challenging the status quo. You're also challenging the labels and the systems that have already been put to you. And you've said that you have had a nomadic life, traveled a lot and seen things, and all of that comes into the practice. How do you feel that your work will, going ahead, will be a form of disruption in some form?
That question has a lot of questions in it. So I think disruption, intervention, reviving are all very, very large words when you think of any craft, when you think of the sort of intersection of art and craft, it can get even more complicated. So, even the last 4 days here, there's been a lot of conversations I've been engaging with that. Are you doing art? Are you doing craft? Who's the artisan? Who's the artist? What is the future that you see for yourself? I already face a lot of categorization. Am I a textile artist? Am I a feminist artist? Are you even an artist because you don't feel? So, to sort of think about how do I want to disrupt it, I think it has to be in the process of a lot of conversations, a lot of dialogue like we are engaging in. And I think when you think about a 200-year-old craft tradition, you can't simply reduce it to, is it craft, is it art? It's a story of humans, it's a story of bodies, it's a humane story. Like my master weaver, who I'm also incredibly close to, told me once, we were doing this documentation project, there were a lot of cameras, we were photographing them, we were taking videos, we were taking stills, and he was really amused. I think for the first 2 years, he was just amused with me, because in his head, he was like, I've seen a lot of you come from outside and do this. So he asked me, what are you trying to do? So I said, how, because this is a sort of living tradition, there is no written account or text of it. I want to document it, I want to record it. So again, he had that sarcastic smile. And he said something so interesting. He said, I've no weaving from my womb. I know this sound before I even entered this world. You can try as hard as you want. You will not be able to learn this. And that was so profound for me. Because what he was talking about was a human connection, was a story that is intergenerationally passed down. So how do you compress it to art, craft, high art, low art? Is this folk art? Is this traditional art? I don't know. And even when you think about the material, like this is actually an interesting slide to have here. So this is part of the documentation series where we talk about the bodies of the weavers that interact with the loom. And these bodies over time undergo a transformation. If you see, most of the weavers have more swollen feet. Their fingers are longer. So it's the amount of laborious sort of their sense of body that they give to this craft. So for them, when you talk to them and you go go back with all your, I don't know, conference room dialogue or studio dialogues of, you tell me, what do you feel like? Is this art or craft? He'll scoff at you. He'll be like, what are you even saying? For him, it is the only skill that he knows. Like my weaver said, that I know this from my womb. It's the only thing I'm going to do through my entire life. So I think the disruption is really in honoring those stories. For me at least, I think I have a huge responsibility, because if I am the voice in, or simply a vessel of being able to tell their stories, I have to do it with the utmost amount of honesty, try and give as much agency back to my weavers, get them back into the funnel of the craft and tradition. We don't even acknowledge their names. We don't even know the names of the weavers. But when we become artists in galleries, there's always our name. So there are a lot of questions around how do we start this dialogue, and I think I've simply scratched the surface. I have more questions than answers.
Wonderful. Actually, that opens up the possibility of looking at community working and also to recognize, I think what you said something was very important about how would you disrupt, would you also tell the story or tell the, like we spoke about it yesterday as well, to bring it up in conversation, to bring it up, the language, the power of the language itself is something that you want to use as a disruptor. And the language does not necessarily mean the spoken or the written language, but the language of the tradition. And as you said, the weaver said, he learned it from his mother's womb. It's a way of life, it's not separate from his life, it's life itself. How do you respond to that, Mayur and Tushar? You also come from a practice which is so rooted in a way of life. Skies, material, all kinds of natural products used in and respecting, and there's some kind of care that you that traditionally you are imbibing from your families, but also to be labeled as tribal artist. And these things are, I mean, there are many, as you said, there are many questions in one. It's a way of life for you, but you're also a tribal artist, and that is something that I want to bring up in your case specifically. Would you want to disrupt that or not? Or would you like to reinforce a tradition, or what would you both want to do?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of questions in one question, of course. And as Lakshmi said, that it's coming from the womb, and as a Warli artist, we are doing this from centuries. So it's not just a decorative practice, it's a ritual. And yeah, this is job that we paint for the weddings, and it's been there from very long time, and this is kind of origin of Warli art. And nowadays there are a lot of changes happening around the community. Like in last 15 years, we have seen massive change and massive development around the community. From the outside, as a person from the citizen from the India, that we always talk about, yeah, our country is growing, but what is happening around the community with this project that no one knows about it and no one wants to. So we are really trying to become a voice from the community where we can understand what is happening outside and what kind of information that we can deliver to the community. At the same time, from the community, what is the tradition of passing the knowledge of the ancestors, the one generation to another. So because of commercialization of a lot of tribal art forms in India, now there are very few people who are willing to share the information to the young generation. And the technology have also cut the new generation from the elders. So the part of exchanging the knowledge is not happening right now. And that's where we are really trying to understand the word disrupt, or understanding about own culture to find a better place where we can really get more information and the oral knowledge from the ancestors, and that we can archive in our practice for the coming generation. So that's quite challenging to as an artist when people say that oh these are the tribal artists or these are the Warli artists, so it becomes very narrow. And as an artist, and when I say I, it's us, and we really want to explore. Like the painting was the only part explored by the artist, but there are a lot of things. There are performers, there are masks, there are songs, there are dances, there are instruments. There are a lot of things that we really want to introduce people outside who can really understand about the Warli, and that can also encourage the young generation to come out from the village and speak about their own communities. It's not about Warli, but there are a lot of tribal art forms in India, Madhavan, Bipura. So this is something we really want to fill this gap from our past generation, our generation, and the coming generation.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. There's a certain kind of knowledge creation also, like you pass on to people around in the community and also outside, so that you both are producing knowledge in some form. That brings me to Debashish, who is building a certain language or a certain recognition, or maybe even a way to recognize and question the body. देवाशीष, आपको मैं जब कल आपसे बात कर रहा था, मुझे लग रहा था कि आपके चैलेंजेस तो बहुत सारे हैं, वो तो दिख ही रहे हैं और सबको लग रहा है, पर आप जो इसको अपने काम के द्वारा आप इसको तो वहाँ के लोगों को एक जैसे कि हो केयर का जो बॉडी, और जो आपने अपने प्रेजेंटेशन में बोला लोगों को आपने ये बॉडी बहुत कुछ हो सकता है, ये एक चीज़ नहीं है, इसको आप इसकी नरेशन में आप कैसे चेंज करना चाहोगे? मतलब लोग जो समझते हैं कि आपको इसने लेबल किया कि आपने मुझे कल बताया कि मैं एक क्वियर बॉडी, मुझे ऐसे क्वियर बॉडी, क्वियर आर्टिस्ट, ये लेबल जो है, या तो मैं सिर्फ जेंडर का, मुझे ये लेबल से नहीं मतलब है, मुझे लोगों के अंडरस्टैंडिंग से मतलब है, मुझे समझना है कि मैं लोगों को दूसरा विजन दिखाना चाहता हूँ।
तो सबसे बड़ा बात ये है कि मैं पहले तो खुद को समझना चाहता हूँ, मेरा एग्जिस्टेंस क्या है, मैं कौन हूँ, तो बार बार खुद के अंदर खुद को ढूंढता हूँ। और ये जो सोशल स्ट्रक्चर है, क्वेयर में जो भी हो, तो इसके अंदर सिर्फ आर्ट को नहीं बांधते, हम खुद को बांधते हैं। ये बॉडी के अंदर जो सोल है, ये खुद को एक्सप्रेस नहीं कर पाता है, इसका जो इस सोसाइटी का जो बाउंड्रीज है। तो ये एक नीड है मेरा कि मैं थ्रू माय आर्ट आई एक्सप्रेस माय सोल। सो एक बहुत जरूरी चीज है कि पहले खुद को समझना, और बॉडी के साथ जो नेचर का रिलेशनशिप है, सोशल तो एक बनाया हुआ स्ट्रक्चर है, लेकिन जो इसका ऑर्गेनिकली जो बॉडी एंड द रिलेशनशिप ऑफ द नेचर, कैसे नेचर के साथ बॉडी मूव करता है, कैसे ग्रो करता है, कैसे उसके साथ मिलता है, तो ये बहुत जरूरी चीज है। जो सोशल में क्या होता है, जो स्ट्रक्चर के अंदर जब हम लोग बांधते हैं, हम अंदर का जो सोल को हम लोग बांधते हैं, तो ये बहुत पेनफुल एक जगह है, जो सोल खुद को एक्सप्रेस करना चाहते हैं, लेकिन जो हम लोग का जो बॉडी स्ट्रक्चर है और सोशल स्ट्रक्चर है, इसमें हम लोग खुद को एक बॉक्स बना देते हैं उसके अंदर। तो जब मैं बहुत जगह घूमा, नेचर के अंदर बहुत रहा, ये जो काम है मेरा एक फोटो परफॉर्मेंस है, तो इधर मैं 50 दिन अकेले रहा एक हाउस में, एक बहुत लोनली। तब मैं खुद को समझने की कोशिश किया, कैसे एक बॉडी के साथ और एंशिएंट जो रॉक है, एंशिएंट जो माउंट है, उसके साथ क्या रिलेशन है, कैसे वो बॉडी एग्जिस्ट कर रहा है, और मेरे एग्जिस्टेंस को मैं ढूंढना चाह रहा हूँ। तो यही जो बार बार मैं एक इंटरनली स्पेस और फीलिंग्स के अकॉर्डिंग खुद का इंटरनल बॉडी को जो चेंज हो रहा है, ये नेचुरली ग्रो करे, और सोशल के साथ बहुत मुश्किल है लोगों को समझाना, लेकिन कोशिश चल रहा है। लेकिन एक तरह दो ऑडियंस होता है, तो जहाँ पे मैं आर्ट बना रहा हूँ उधर बहुत समझते लोग आते हैं, तो वो समझ पाते हैं, लेकिन मैं जहाँ से बिलोंग करता हूँ उधर समझाना बहुत मुश्किल है। और मेरे बारे में तो मेरा घर का लोग भी नहीं जानते मेरा आइडेंटिटी के बारे में। तो मैं जहाँ से रूरल एरिया से बिलोंग करता हूँ, एकदम गाँव से, उधर समझाना बहुत मुश्किल है, बहुत आसान नहीं है। तो एक तरफ ऑडियंस समझते हैं, एक तरफ भी और समझते हैं, लेकिन दूसरे पक्ष का जो ऑडियंस है, तो जहाँ पे मैं बिलोंग करता हूँ, जो अपना लोग है, उनको समझाना बहुत मुश्किल है।
We all want to break many boundaries that have been set and imposed on us. And when you push the boundary forward, you end up disrupting something. You change the status quo. I think we are very close to finishing in terms of we don't have enough time, but I don't know if we are able to open up questions, maybe 2 questions from the audience. Okay. If anyone has any questions that I think we'd be able to answer.
Thank you very much. All fascinating and beautifully drawn together, the ideas of disrupting the mining. With the Mundu, Veshti, Lungi, I'm from Australia, huge South Indian community. You never see anybody wearing them outside of traditional functions. It becomes quite a radical marker to wear your dress. I'm constantly encouraging my Tamil friends to wear it to work because it is a formal and dignified thing. Of course, it's also difficult because there's no pockets. But means that everybody ends up having a huge top pocket with all their phones and stuff, you know. But I started a campaign in Australia called Lungis Without Borders to encourage people to wear it in public. But it's not being taken up. Can you talk about the idea of, for example, you're in Mumbai, very few people would wear it in, you know, your class strata, etc. Can you talk about the radical nature of wearing it and representing it in a public mainstream?
So, I think that's an interesting part of it that you touched on. And I think it strikes a lot of chords with me because when I was living in Europe, I just lived there in different parts for about 5 to 6 years. I remember the first place in Europe that I landed up was in Copenhagen in Denmark. And I felt completely out of place. I was a brown body in this utopian white setup. It was dark, depressing, there was no sun, I'm from India. I get fitted in so many ways. And I'm not a trained or taught artist. So when I arrived in Europe, I was trying to find a corporate job. And I remember when I was sitting in my Danish class, because I thought that was the best way to meet other expats, I had this really funny realization that here I am so far away from home, trying to learn this really strange Viking tribal language that I have no connection with, but I don't know how to write my own language. Yeah, or as a sort of trailing expat, that's the word, when you have to introduce yourself. It was always very confusing. So where are you from? I'm from Kerala. Oh, okay, so where do you live? Bombay. So what do you speak? English. You speak English? Oh, I'm sure you speak Hindi. Okay, I speak English, a little bit of Hindi. But what is your language? So then I would say, okay, Malayalam, but I'm not very sort of proficient in it. I don't read and write it. And then I was taking some art courses. And say if I was in Austria, the class itself was being spoken in or taught in Germany. When you hang out with people though they know you're an outsider, the onus was on you to assimilate, was on you to decide how you want to fit in. So what I realized is there was this immense sense of pride for their identity in terms of language, in terms of food, in terms of what they wear. Why did I sort of carry this sense of, I don't know, hierarchy within me that I didn't want to sort of own my own sense of identity? And I think it's complicated to answer that in a very linear way because of our sort of sense of colonial rule. There's a lot of hierarchy in every way to English as a language. We relegate all of our sort of native languages, culture, dress codes, attire. And I think to answer that, some of it fits there in, at least for a generation like mine, for parents that migrated out of their hometowns to bigger cities, where they did that because they wanted to provide their kids more opportunity. They always felt like English or sort of sticking to that in every form, in the way you dress, the way you speak, is a better way of finding more opportunities in the world. So I think it's somewhere between that colonial native divide and historically what we've been through, that we have a bit of complexity in addressing our own identity.